So first to start off, what's the most common mistakes that you see with young tennis players and how can you help them improve that?
I mean, do you mean like technically speaking, like form,
Like
technique, or?
form, mentality, anything that you see on the court. What do you think they can do to improve it?
Sure. I would say like mentality wise, the biggest mistake I see is as soon as kids like go down in matches, they kind of just give up on it.
Yeah,
So they'll start like, blasting balls as hard as they can and they kind of just get down and try to get through with the match as soon as possible. But um I think ideally, you keep fighting back, you keep trying new things and sometimes like everybody has matches as you start maturing where you're down 6-1 or you lose the first set 6-1 and eventually you
yeah,
you kind of figure out, hey, I got a new technique here that wasn't working. Now it's working. But I think like some maturity is like learning to play with some variety, trying something new and not giving up when you're down bad. Technically speaking, I think I see a lot of young tennis players that are like more self-taught, maybe not academy kids, where they have, the wrong like grip, or they don't use their whole kinetic chain to swing. So yeah, I mean, did that answer your question?
yeah, that answered it.
All
And
right.
so I know mentality is a big part of tennis. It's a big part of the game. So how do you help players develop a strong mental game, especially when they're under pressure during a match?
Sure. So I mean, I have a technique of my own. Obviously, like I play myself sometimes. At this point, more of a hobby than anything else. But I think, and I think a lot of the best professional players would agree with this. You have to learn to reset between every point. Whether it be good or bad. It's like Roger Federer has a famous speech where he says, I won 80% of my matches, but I lost 48% of the points
Yeah,
that I played. So, I mean, ultimately, it's you're gonna lose about half as many points, even if you're one of the best players in the world.
yeah,
So just learning to like mentally reset after a bad shot, or um, I guess not blaming yourself for trying something different is pretty important. And then I think. I personally fall along the philosophy, and I've told some kids on our high school team, pick a room in your house that you really like to spend time in. It
mhm,
looks like you're like in your dad's office or something right now, or maybe that's like a video game
yes,
room. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, that's like your favorite place in the house, right? The first thing mentally, I legitimately go to the bathroom, think about the point, what I just did wrong, try to learn from it, and then flush that point down the toilet. So I literally envision myself flushing that point down the toilet. Then I
yeah,
walk into the hallway, play with my strings a little bit, walk into the hallway, go to my favorite room in the house. For me, it's like my office, where I work, where I play video games, where I make all the lineups and stuff. And then I just see myself like, all right, I'm in my good spot now. That point is gone. You kind of just start fresh because, if you
yeah.
start dwelling on every mistake that you make or every bad idea that you have, you're gonna probably spiral into playing pretty bad.
So focus is again another big part of the game. So what do you recommend to maintain focus and composure during a match?
Yeah, that's a great question. As far as maintaining focus, I mean, I think you have to legitimately be able to have a conversation with yourself about, refocusing. So I see a lot of young players, and going back to mistakes that they make is, they lose a point, they already have two balls in their pocket, they walk straight up to the line, bounce the ball, and they serve. I think part of like growing in tennis is, these kids start getting older, professionals start playing longer. You'll start to see them maybe in between every point, they're grabbing their towel. They're thinking about, what the next point is. I think the difference between, a junior varsity player and a varsity player, you would know you're a varsity player, is these junior varsity players, they're not really constructing points. They don't have a game plan for the point. They're not thinking, okay, I'm going to serve wide and then I'm going to take the next shot, outside to the other side. It's more just like I'm just going to try to hit the ball back and forth as many times as I can. So I think to answer your question, I mean, focusing yourself between each point involves like literally having a game plan and sticking to that game plan throughout the point.
You kind of talked about strategy and like not just blindly hitting the ball. So just how important is strategy and what are some key things that players should know to maintain like a good point?
For sure. I think in terms of like the most important strategies, do have a game plan. You can't start a point just by trying to get the ball in the box, right? say, I'm going to serve wide. My next shot is going to be this. So I will say, I mean, singles is a lot more just like the best athlete is going to win, even if you are the better tennis player, so to speak, and you have the better strategy. I mean, you can still lose a singles match pretty easily. But I mean, I think the best tennis players in the world, in my opinion, they play doubles. That's where
Yeah.
the most strategy is involved, and I think like we work on doubles in practice. You guys are all great athletes. I don't need to teach you how to be a good athlete, but if you don't know where to stand on the court and what the next best shot is when you're playing doubles, it's gonna devolve pretty quickly. So generally, the players that are standing in the right place and hitting the right shot when they're playing doubles, I think are gonna win the most matches, even if they're not necessarily the best tennis players.
So I know we play like really good schools like William and Reed and Rivers, and it does come with a few losses. So what advice would you give to players on handling tough losses and staying motivated for the next match or the next point?
These are some great questions. Impressed, man. You clearly prepared. Yeah, I think like in terms of handling tough losses, it goes back to the same point that I made. I mean, the best tennis players in the world, they lose a whole lot too. They're gonna lose 48%, or give or take 1%, 2% of their points. And so just being able to like bounce back from those points individually and then kind of seeing the big picture ultimately. Like something I tell everyone I coach, and I coach 4-year-olds to 65-year-olds,
Yeah,
is there's literally only one way to get good at tennis, and it's just to lose a whole lot. But I think the best way to bounce back is if you see all of those losses that you have as an opportunity, like instead of dwelling on it, like, man, it just sucks that I lost, instead of saying like, okay, well, I'm glad I got the chance to play that person. Maybe they were better than me, but this is what I learned from it. This is what I'm going to try to apply to my next match and really
yeah.
learn a lesson every time that you lose. It's the only way to get better at tennis is losing.
And then my final question, I know you've been playing for a while, you've been coaching for a while. So what's like the best piece of advice you've gotten while doing this?
I guess it depends on like the context that if it's advice related to helping young men like yourself like grow and mature as people. I
Yeah,
think that advice is definitely different than the advice that maybe I would give for like being a better tennis player.
yeah,
Uh, but I mean, ultimately, I think, and I think I learned this lesson the hard way myself is, when you're 13, 14, 15, 16 years old, a lot of times it's hard to think about, the future. You're really thinking about yourself, what makes me happy in this moment in time. So, I won't say any names, but
yeah,
there's definitely some people where I see so much potential in them, and they're not necessarily applying themselves. And I think at some point, they're gonna lose a tough match at state, and they're gonna think to themselves, like, man, I wonder if instead of joking around with my friend that 30 minutes, if I had paid attention to that drill,
yeah,
if that would have made a difference. And I think for myself, I look at myself at a young age, I had a lot of potential myself, and instead I, spent time chasing girls and having fun and, doing all the teenager things. But
yeah,
really look back at your life, I mean, I think it can feel like you might have wasted a little bit of time. The important thing in
yeah,
school and work and whatever it is that you're doing is that you're always applying yourself 100%. Anything that you do, you're always trying your best at it.
yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily just tennis advice, but always take any opportunity to get better at something and like take it 100% seriously and apply your whole self to it.
So that about sums up my questions. So some good information. Thank you.